The Colorado Territory stretched endlessly beneath an October sky the color of hammered steel, its peaks crowned with snow that warned of winter's approaching grip. Samuel Mitchell guided his pack horse through the narrow mountain pass that connected the high country to Silver Creek, his weather hand steady on the reins despite the treacherous terrain. At 31, Sam had spent the last decade hunting buffalo across the Great Plains, providing meat and hides to railroad crews, frontier settlements, and anyone willing to pay fair prices for honest work. But the great herds were thinning now, pushed ever westward by railroad expansion and the endless appetite of eastern markets for western resources. The buffalo trade that had sustained him was dying, forcing experienced hunters like Sam to seek new opportunities in territory that grew smaller and more dangerous each year. Colorado's mining boom offered possibilities for men with practical skills and steady nerves, though Sam remained cautious about trading the freedom of the plains for the confines of underground work. His pack horse carried the results of his latest hunt, prime buffalo robes and dried meat that would fetch good prices in Silver Creek's markets. It wasn't the massive haul of earlier years, but it was enough to sustain him through winter while he considered his options for the future. The sound that stopped him cold wasn't natural to the mountains, the sharp crack of rifle fire echoing off canyon walls, followed by shouting that carried the desperate edge of violence. Sam pulled his horse into the shelter of a massive boulder, his hand automatically checking the Winchester rifle that never left his side. Through the crisp mountain air, he could hear distinct voices, men calling orders in the rough language of frontier criminals, a woman's voice raised in defiance rather than fear, and the nervous whinnying of horses under stress. An attack was taking place somewhere ahead, and from the sounds, it was still in progress. Sam's first instinct was caution. Mountain passes were perfect places for ambushes, and a lone traveler who interfered in others' business might find himself facing more trouble than he could handle. The smart play was to wait until violence ended, then continue on his way without getting involved in matters that didn't concern him. But the woman's voice reached him again, clear and determined despite her obvious danger. "You'll get nothing from me, you cowards." Nothing. Sam had been raised by a father who believed that a man's character showed truest when helping cost more than it profited. The woman ahead was facing desperate circumstances, and he was the only person in position to provide assistance. Caution was a luxury he couldn't afford when someone's life hung in the balance. He secured his pack horse to a sturdy pine, checked his ammunition, and began working his way through the rocks toward the sounds of conflict. The terrain provided excellent cover for someone who knew how to move quietly, skills Sam had learned during years of stalking wary buffalo across open plains. The scene that unfolded below him made his blood run cold. A overturned stagecoach lay across the narrow trail, its team scattered and its driver nowhere to be seen. 4 men with weapons surrounded a woman who stood with her back to the coach's remains, her chin raised in defiance despite the odds against her. The woman appeared to be in her mid-20s, with dark brown hair partially escaped from a practical bun and clothes that marked her as a working person rather than someone of leisure. Her traveling dress was well-made but not fancy, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to handling difficult situations. What struck Sam immediately was the bandits' behavior. Rather than simply robbing her and moving on, they seemed intent on taking her alive. Their leader, a tall man with a scarred face and expensive gun rig, gestured toward her with obvious frustration. "Mrs. Hartwell, you're coming with us whether you cooperate or not," the leader was saying. "This can be easy or hard, but it's going to happen either way." The woman Sam now knew as Mrs. Hartwell shook her head firmly. "I told you, I'm Catherine Miller, and I don't know any Mrs. Hartwell. You've made a mistake." "No mistake, lady. We know exactly who you are and what you're worth. Now stop playing games and come along quietly." Sam assessed the tactical situation with the cool calculation that had kept him alive during dangerous years on the frontier. 4 armed men, weapons drawn, positioned to cover multiple approaches. 1 woman with no apparent means of defense. Terrain that offered good cover for approach, but limited escape routes once shooting started. The odds were bad, but Sam had faced worse during conflicts with hostile tribes and desperate outlaws. More importantly, the bandits' focus on her captive meant they weren't watching for outside threats. Moving with the patient stealth that buffalo hunting had taught him, Sam positioned himself where he could command the best field of fire while staying protected from return shots. His Winchester held 15 rounds, and he was accurate enough to make each one count if the situation demanded maximum efficiency. "Last chance, Mrs. Hartwell," the bandit leader called out. "Come with us now, or we'll take you unconscious and let you wake up wherever we decide to keep you." "I told you. My name is Catherine Miller, and I'm traveling to Silver Creek on business," the woman replied, her voice steady despite the growing threat. "Whatever you want with this Mrs. Hartwell, you'll have to look elsewhere." Sam had heard enough. Whatever the woman's real identity, she was clearly in mortal danger from men who intended her serious harm. He rose from cover with his rifle already aimed. "Drop your weapons," Sam commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone prepared to enforce his demands with lethal force. The bandits spun toward this unexpected threat, their confusion giving Sam precious seconds to establish tactical advantage. His first shot took the leader in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending his pistol flying. The second shot shattered the weapon of the man closest to the woman. "Next 2 shots won't be warnings," Sam announced, his rifle trained on the remaining armed bandits. "Drop your guns and back away from the lady." The 2 uninjured bandits looked at their wounded leader, then at Sam's steady aim, clearly calculating their chances of surviving a firefight with someone who'd already demonstrated deadly accuracy. After a tense moment, they slowly placed their weapons on ground and raised their hands. "Smart choice," Sam said, moving closer while keeping his rifle ready. "Now help your friend onto his horse and get out of here. If I see any of you in this territory again, I won't be offering warnings." As the bandits collected their wounded leader and retreated up the mountain trail, Sam turned his attention to the woman they'd been threatening. Catherine Miller, or Mrs. Hartwell, depending on which name was real, stood beside the overturned coach, studying him with intelligent brown eyes that revealed both gratitude and careful evaluation. "Thank you," she said simply. "You saved my life." Sam touched his hat brim in acknowledgement. Couldn't very well ride past while someone was in trouble. "Are you hurt, ma'am?" "No, just shaken. They killed my driver and guard. Poor men. I was traveling light to avoid attention, but apparently not light enough." Sam noted the expensive leather traveling case she clutched, along with other details that suggested the woman possessed more resources than her modest appearance indicated. But frontier courtesy demanded that he accept her story without prying into inconsistencies. "My name's Sam Mitchell," he offered. "I'm heading to Silver Creek if you need escort for the rest of your journey." Catherine hesitated for just a moment before responding. "Catherine Miller. And yes, I would be very grateful for your protection. Those men seem quite determined, and I suspect they might return with reinforcements." As Sam helped her gather what salvageable belongings remained from the wrecked coach, he couldn't shake the feeling that Catherine Miller was much more than she appeared to be. But whatever secret she carried, she'd proven herself brave enough to face down armed bandits rather than surrender to their demands. The trail to Silver Creek would give him opportunity to learn more about the mysterious woman he'd rescued and the reasons why desperate men were willing to kill for the privilege of taking her alive. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the mountain trail as Sam and Catherine made their way toward Silver Creek, her salvaged belongings secured to his pack horse while she rode behind him on his sturdy gelding. The close quarters necessitated by shared transportation had initially made conversation awkward, but Catherine's practical frontier attitude gradually put them both at ease. "You handled yourself well back there," Sam observed as they navigated a particularly treacherous section of switchbacks. Most folks would have been too frightened to think clearly with her guns pointed at them. Catherine's laugh held little humor. "Fear is a luxury that frontier women can't always afford. When you're traveling alone through dangerous territory, you learn to keep your wits about you, or you don't survive long." Sam appreciated her straightforward response, though he noted how carefully she avoided discussing the specifics of her business or the reasons why the bandits had been so determined to capture her specifically. The name Mrs. Hartwell suggested she was married, but she wore no wedding ring, and had introduced herself as Catherine Miller. "Those men seem to know you," Sam said carefully, giving her opportunity to explain without directly challenging her story. "Called you by a different name than the one you gave me. People make mistakes." Catherine replied, her voice carrying the finality of someone who didn't intend to elaborate further. Especially desperate people who see what they want to see rather than what's actually there. Sam accepted her deflection with frontier courtesy, though his years of reading sign and interpreting behavior suggested Catherine Miller was hiding significantly more than she was revealing. The expensive quality of her traveling case, her educated speech patterns, and her composed reaction to mortal danger all indicated someone accustomed to authority and responsibility. As they rode through the afternoon, Sam found himself drawn to Catherine's combination of intelligence and determination. She asked perceptive questions about the territory, demonstrated genuine interest in his experiences as a buffalo hunter, and proved to be excellent company despite the dangerous circumstances of their meeting. The buffalo trade must be challenging work, Catherine observed as they paused to rest the horses beside a mountain stream. Dangerous and uncertain, but with considerable rewards for those skilled enough to succeed. It was, Sam agreed, noting her use of past tense. But the herds are thinning now, pushed west by railroad expansion and overhunting. A man has to think about what comes next when his livelihood is disappearing. Catherine studied him with obvious interest. And what are you considering for your future? Sam was surprised by her direct question and his own willingness to answer honestly. Mining, maybe. Colorado's silver boom offers opportunities for men with steady nerves and practical skills. Though I'm not sure underground work would suit someone who spent his life in open country. Silver mining is indeed profitable for those who understand the business, Catherine said thoughtfully, but it requires significant capital investment and technical knowledge that most individual prospectors lack. Her knowledgeable response confirmed Sam's suspicion that Catherine knew far more about mining operations than a simple traveling businesswoman would typically possess. But before he could explore the subject further, she'd changed topics to safer ground. The conversation revealed Catherine to be well-educated and surprisingly knowledgeable about business matters, territorial politics, and the economic forces shaping Colorado's development. Sam found himself enjoying their intellectual exchanges almost as much as her physical proximity during their shared ride. As evening approached, they made camp in a sheltered valley with good grass for the horses and fresh water from a mountain spring. Sam's frontier skills provided comfortable accommodations despite their basic supplies, while Catherine proved surprisingly adept at camp tasks that suggested considerable experience with outdoor living. "You've done this before," Sam observed, watching her efficiently prepare coffee over their small fire. "More often than you might think," Catherine admitted. "Frontier business sometimes requires traveling to remote locations where hotels and restaurants aren't available. What kind of business takes you to such places?" Catherine was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire with an expression that revealed internal debate about how much truth to share. "Import and export," she said finally. "Facilitating trade between frontier communities and eastern markets." It was a plausible but vague explanation that could cover almost any commercial activity. Sam recognized another careful deflection, though he was beginning to understand that Catherine's secrecy might stem from legitimate caution rather than dishonest intentions. "Those bandits back there," Sam said, approaching the subject indirectly. They seemed awfully determined for ordinary road agents. Usually robbers take what they can find and move on quickly. These men wanted you specifically. Catherine nodded grimly. "I've been thinking about that as well. Organized criminals sometimes target people they believe possess valuable information or resources. Perhaps they mistook me for someone else. Mrs. Hartwell? Perhaps." Catherine's voice carried no conviction, and Sam suspected she knew exactly why the bandits had targeted her. Despite her obvious reluctance to share personal details, Catherine proved to be engaging company during the long evening hours. She possessed genuine curiosity about Sam's experiences as a buffalo hunter, asking intelligent questions about tracking techniques, territorial geography, and the challenges of frontier survival. In return, Sam found himself sharing stories he rarely told, describing the freedom and hardships of life following the great herds across endless plains. Catherine listened with obvious fascination, her questions revealing appreciation for the skills and courage required to succeed in such demanding work. "You speak of the buffalo with real affection," Catherine observed. "Do you miss them when you're not hunting?" Sam considered the question seriously. I respect them. They're magnificent animals, perfectly adapted to their environment. But the life I built following them is ending whether I want it to or not. The future belongs to people who can adapt to change rather than those who cling to disappearing opportunities. Adaptation requires courage, Catherine said softly. The willingness to risk what you know for possibilities you can only imagine. Something in her tone suggested personal experience with difficult transitions, though she offered no elaboration. Sam was beginning to recognize the pattern of Catherine's conversation. Moments of genuine openness followed by careful withdrawal whenever discussion approached sensitive subjects. As they prepared to sleep beside the dying fire, Sam arranged their blankets to provide maximum warmth while maintaining proper distance between traveling companions who barely knew each other. Catherine accepted his courteous arrangements with gratitude that suggested awareness of his efforts to respect her dignity. "Sam," she said quietly as he settled down for the night, "I want you to know that what you did today, it meant more than I can properly express. Whatever my reason for traveling through dangerous territory, you saved my life without knowing anything about me or my circumstances." "Anyone would have done the same," Sam replied, though they both knew it wasn't true. "No," Catherine said firmly. "Not everyone has the courage to risk themselves for strangers. That says something important about your character." As Sam listened to Catherine's steady breathing and the night sounds of the Colorado mountains, he reflected on the unexpected turn his life had taken. This morning he'd been a buffalo hunter carrying hides to market. Tonight he was protecting a mysterious woman whose true identity remained hidden behind carefully constructed explanations. Tomorrow would bring them to Silver Creek, where Catherine's secrets might finally be revealed, and where Sam would need to decide what role, if any, he wanted to play in whatever complicated situation had made her a target for organized criminals. But tonight, listening to mountain wind and feeling responsible for the safety of the intriguing woman beside him, Sam found himself hoping that their association wouldn't end when they reached civilization. Silver Creek sprawled across a mountain valley, like a hastily thrown-together collection of buildings that had somehow decided to call itself a town. What had started as a modest mining camp 3 years earlier had exploded into a booming settlement, complete with banks, hotels, saloons, and an inevitable collection of businesses that followed wherever silver was being pulled from the earth in profitable quantities. Sam guided his horse down the main street, noting how Catherine grew increasingly tense as they approached the town center. Her earlier composure was giving way to obvious anxiety, though she seemed more concerned about being recognized than about any continuing threat from the bandits who'd attacked her. "Busy place," Sam observed, noting the crowds of miners, businessmen, and fortune-seekers who filled the boardwalks despite the early morning hour. "Silver Creek has grown considerably since my last visit," Catherine replied carefully. "Success brings attention, both welcome and unwelcome." Sam was beginning to understand that Catherine's cryptic responses usually contained more truth than her direct statements. Whatever connection she had to Silver Creek, it was significant enough to make her nervous about being seen in town. They made their way toward the Frontier Hotel, Silver Creek's most respectable establishment and a logical place for Catherine to arrange proper accommodations, while Sam saw to selling his buffalo products. But as they dismounted near the hotel's front entrance, a well-dressed man emerged who immediately recognized Catherine despite her obvious attempt to remain inconspicuous. "Mrs. Hartwell," the man called out with obvious relief. "Thank God you're safe. When your coach was found yesterday with Jackson and Porter dead, we feared the worst." Catherine's carefully maintained disguise crumbled in an instant, her shoulders sagging with the resignation of someone whose deception had finally run its course. Sam watched as she transformed from a modest Catherine Miller into someone who clearly commanded considerable respect and authority in Silver Creek. "Hello, Mr. Peterson," she replied with dignity intact despite her exposed circumstances. "As you can see, I survived the attack, thanks to Mr. Mitchell's timely intervention." Peterson, a prosperous-looking man in his 50s who carried himself with the confidence of someone important in local affairs, turned to Sam with obvious gratitude. "Sir, if you saved Mrs. Hartwell from those murderous bastards, then Silver Creek owes you a considerable debt." Sam found himself studying Catherine, Mrs. Hartwell, with new understanding. The expensive traveling case, her knowledge of mining operations, the bandits' determination to capture rather than simply rob her. All made sense now that her true identity was revealed. "Mr. Mitchell," Catherine said formally, "I owe you an apology for my deception. I am indeed Catherine Hartwell, and I own the Hartwell Silver Mine." The name hit Sam like a physical blow. The Hartwell Mine was legendary throughout Colorado Territory, the richest and most productive silver operation in the region, responsible for a significant portion of the territory's mining wealth. Catherine Hartwell wasn't just wealthy. She was one of the most powerful business leaders in the entire territory. "You're Catherine Hartwell," Sam repeated, his voice carefully neutral despite the shock of learning he'd been traveling with one of Colorado's most prominent citizens. "I am," Catherine confirmed, her chin rising with the pride of someone unashamed of her accomplishments. "I apologize for the false name, but recent threats made me cautious about revealing my identity to strangers." Peterson gestured urgently toward the hotel. "Mrs. Hartwell, we need to discuss security arrangements immediately. The attack on your coach proves that the threats were serious, and we can't risk another attempt." As they moved into the hotel's lobby, Sam found himself swept along by the urgency of Catherine's business associates and the obvious importance of protecting someone whose safety affected the entire region's economic stability. The modest buffalo hunter who'd rescued a woman in distress had inadvertently become involved with territorial politics and business interests far beyond his experience. "Mr. Mitchell," Catherine said as Peterson and other associates surrounded her with urgent reports and security concerns, "I hope you'll allow me to properly thank you for your assistance. Perhaps we could speak privately once I've addressed these immediate matters." Sam nodded, though he was beginning to understand that the gulf between his circumstances and Catherine's was wider than any mountain pass. She moved in a world of business empires and territorial influence, while he lived from sale to sale of buffalo hides in a dying trade. While Catherine met with her associates in the hotel's private dining room, Sam arranged for a room and then walked Silver Creek streets to get a sense of the town where his rescued traveler wielded such obvious influence. What he discovered was a community entirely dependent on the success of the Hartwell Mine. The mine employed hundreds of workers whose families filled Silver Creek's homes and businesses. Local merchants prospered by supplying the operation's needs, while banks and investors competed for opportunities to finance expansion projects. Catherine Hartwell wasn't just wealthy. She was the cornerstone of the entire region's economy. "You're the fellow who brought Mrs. Hartwell back safe," observed the bartender at the Silver Dollar Saloon, where Sam had stopped for a meal and local information. "Whole town's been worried sick since word came about the attack." "She seems well regarded here," Sam replied neutrally. "Regarded?" The bartender laughed. "Mister, Catherine Hartwell built this town. When she inherited that mine from her husband 3 years ago, folks figured a woman couldn't run such a big operation. But she's doubled production and tripled employment, while treating workers fairer than most male owners ever did." Sam absorbed this information while eating his meal, beginning to understand both Catherine's importance and the reasons why criminals might target her for kidnapping and ransom. Her wealth and influence made her valuable far beyond what ordinary road agents could steal from a stagecoach. That evening, Catherine sent word requesting his presence in the hotel's private parlor, where she waited with an elegance that seemed natural despite her earlier disguise as a modest frontier businesswoman. She'd changed into clothes that reflected her true station, well-tailored but practical garments that suggested someone who worked in her business rather than merely owning it. "Mr. Mitchell," she began formally, "I wanted to apologize properly for my deception and to discuss compensation for your assistance." "No compensation necessary," Sam replied. "I helped because you needed help, not because I expected payment." Catherine smiled with genuine warmth. "I suspected you'd say that, which makes me even more grateful for your character. But I insist on expressing my appreciation in practical terms." She gestured toward a leather portfolio on the table between them. "I'm prepared to offer you a position with the Hartwell Mine, supervisor of security operations, with salary and responsibilities commensurate with your demonstrated skills and courage." The offer was generous beyond anything Sam had imagined possible, promising financial security and social position that would transform his entire life. But it also represented a fundamental change from the independence and freedom that had defined his existence as a buffalo hunter. That's very generous, Mrs. Hartwell, but I'm not sure I'm suited for such responsibility. You handled yourself perfectly during a crisis situation, Catherine replied. You made tactical decisions under pressure, showed excellent judgment about when and how to use force, and demonstrated the kind of character I want protecting my operation and employees. Sam studied her face, looking for signs that gratitude might be influencing her business judgment. But Catherine's expression showed the same intelligent evaluation he'd noticed during their journey, suggesting she'd carefully consider her offer rather than making it impulsively. There's something else, Catherine continued, her voice growing softer and more personal. Something I should have said earlier, but wasn't sure how to express properly. She rose from her chair and moved to the window, overlooking Silver Creek's bustling main street. When those bandits had me cornered yesterday, I wasn't just afraid for my life. I was afraid that my death would destroy everything I built here, the jobs, the families, the community that depends on the mine's success. Catherine turned back to Sam with an expression that revealed vulnerability beneath her business confidence. You didn't just save my life, Sam. You saved the livelihoods of hundreds of people who depend on my continued existence. That kind of debt can't be repaid with money alone. Sam began to understand that Catherine's offer involved more than employment opportunity. She was proposing partnership with someone whose values and character she'd tested under the most dangerous circumstances possible. I need to think about this, Sam said honestly. It's a generous offer, but it would mean changing everything about how I've lived my life. Of course, Catherine agreed. Take all the time you need. But while you're considering the position, I hope you'll also consider the possibility that some changes lead to better opportunities than what we're leaving behind. As Sam walked back to his room, he reflected on the dramatic turn his life had taken in just 2 days. He'd rescued a woman from bandits and discovered she was one of Colorado's most powerful business leaders. She'd offered him opportunities that could secure his future while allowing him to use skills he developed during years of frontier survival. But accepting Catherine's offer would mean more than changing careers. It would mean entering a world of wealth, influence, and social responsibility that he'd never imagined joining. The question was whether he possessed the courage to risk everything familiar for possibilities he could barely comprehend. Sam spent a restless night weighing Catherine's offer against the freedom he'd known as a buffalo hunter. By morning, he decided to accept the security position, recognizing both the practical benefits and his growing feelings for the remarkable woman who'd offered it. But before he could meet with Catherine to discuss details, urgent news arrived that changed everything. Mr. Mitchell, Peterson burst into the hotel dining room, where Sam was eating breakfast. Thank God you're here. Mrs. Hartwell's been taken. Sam's blood turned ice cold. What happened? She left early this morning to inspect the mine operations, against our advice about security precautions. Her carriage was found empty 2 miles outside town, with her driver unconscious and the horses scattered. Sam was already moving toward the door, his mind racing through tactical possibilities. Same bandits from yesterday? Has to be, Peterson replied, struggling to keep pace. They left a ransom note demanding $100,000 in silver and safe passage out of the territory. The amount was staggering, more money than most people would see in several lifetimes. But for someone who owned the territory's richest silver mine, it represented a sum that could be raised, which meant the bandits had planned their operation carefully. Where is the exchange supposed to take place? Sam asked, already planning rescue scenarios in his head. Dead Man's Canyon at sunset today. They want the silver delivered by one person, no weapons, no escort. Peterson's voice carried the despair of someone who understood the impossible situation. If we comply, they'll probably kill her anyway. If we don't, she dies for certain. Sam studied the ransom note, noting details that suggested the bandits were more organized and professional than typical frontier criminals. The location they'd chosen was perfect for an ambush, a narrow canyon with limited access and excellent defensive positions. Have you contacted the territorial marshal? Sam asked. Sent word this morning, but Marshal Crawford is 3 days away dealing with trouble in Pueblo. We're on our own until he can get here. Sam recognized the tactical reality. By the time official help arrived, Catherine would be dead regardless of whether the ransom was paid. Her only chance lay with immediate action by people willing to risk everything for her rescue. I need to see the site where she was taken, Sam decided. And I'll need detailed maps of Dead Man's Canyon and the surrounding territory. Peterson stared at him with dawning hope. You have a plan? I'm working on one, Sam replied grimly. But first I need to understand exactly what we're facing. The sight of Catherine's capture told a clear story to someone trained in reading sign. The attack had been swift and professional, with the bandits using superior numbers and positioning to overwhelm her single guard without giving him opportunity to resist or escape for help. Most telling were the horse tracks leading away from the ambush site. Sam counted at least 6 riders, all mounted on good horses, and moving with the confidence of men following a predetermined plan. These weren't desperate road agents seeking quick profit. They were organized criminals executing a carefully planned kidnapping. They knew her route, Sam told Peterson as they examined the evidence. Knew exactly when and where she'd be traveling. Someone provided inside information about Mrs. Hartwell's schedule. Peterson's face paled at the implication. You're saying someone in Silver Creek is working with the kidnappers? Has to be. This operation required too much specific knowledge to be coincidental. The realization that Catherine faced a trail from within her own organization made Sam's anger burn cold and deadly. She'd trusted people with her safety, and someone had sold that trust to criminals who saw her only as opportunity for profit. Back in Silver Creek, Sam gathered supplies and intelligence while Peterson worked to raise the ransom money. The town's response to Catherine's kidnapping proved how deeply she was respected and needed. Businesses closed as owners joined search parties, miners volunteered their wages toward a ransom fund, and families prayed for the safe return of the woman who provided their livelihoods. The whole town depends on her, explained Martha Stevens, who ran the boarding house where many mine workers lived. If something happens to Mrs. Hartwell, Silver Creek dies with her. Sam understood the pressure, but he also knew that paying ransom rarely guaranteed victim survival. The bandits had already killed Catherine's previous guards, proving their willingness to use lethal force. Once they had the silver, they'd have no incentive to honor their promises. As afternoon shadows lengthened toward the sunset deadline, Sam made his way to Dead Man's Canyon with grim determination. He'd studied maps and interviewed locals until he understood every approach, every defensive position, every possible escape route the terrain offered. The canyon was exactly as dangerous as he'd expected, a narrow slash through red rock walls that rose 200 feet on either side. Anyone entering the canyon would be completely exposed to shooters positioned on the rim, while confined space eliminated any possibility of tactical maneuvering. But Sam's years of hunting buffalo across difficult terrain had taught him patience and the value of unexpected approaches. While the bandits waited in their perfect ambush positions, he worked his way through terrain they'd assumed was impassable. The climb took 3 hours of careful movement up rock faces that would challenge an experienced mountaineer. But as the sun touched the western horizon, Sam found himself above the canyon, where 6 armed men waited around a small fire, their horses picketed nearby and their confidence obvious in their relaxed postures. Catherine sat apart from her captors, her hands bound but her back straight with unbroken defiance. Even in captivity, she maintained a dignity and courage that had first attracted Sam's admiration. Seeing her alive filled him with relief, while her obvious spirit gave him hope that she could assist in her own rescue when the opportunity arose. Sunset's here, called the bandit leader, the same scarred man from yesterday's attack. Where's our money? Sam had positioned himself where he could command the entire campsite, while remaining invisible to the men below. His rifle was loaded and ready, and he planned a sequence of shots to neutralize the greatest threats first while minimizing risk to Catherine. But before he could begin his attack, movement at the canyon's mouth announced the arrival of Peterson and 2 other men carrying saddlebags that presumably contained the ransom silver. Sam cursed silently. The townsman's presence complicated his rescue plan and gave the bandits additional hostages to threaten. "That's far enough," the leader shouted. "Drop the silver and back away." As Peterson complied with the demands, Sam realized he was facing the worst possible tactical situation. Multiple innocent civilians in the line of fire, professional criminals in defensive positions, and limited ammunition against superior numbers. But Catherine's life depended on action rather than caution. Taking careful aim at the bandit leader, Sam whispered a prayer for accuracy and squeezed a trigger that would begin the deadliest gamble of his life. The sound of his shot echoed off canyon walls like thunder, and suddenly Dead Man's Canyon erupted into violence that would determine whether Catherine Hartwell lived or died. Sam's first shot dropped the bandit leader before the echo finished bouncing off canyon walls. His second took down the man closest to Catherine, while his third shattered the rifle of another outlaw before it returned fire. But 3 shots left 3 enemies still alive and dangerous, with Catherine bound and helpless in the middle of a firefight. "Kill the woman!" screamed one of the surviving bandits, swinging his pistol toward Catherine. But Catherine proved she was more than a helpless captive. Despite her bound hands, she threw herself sideways and rolled behind a boulder as bullets sparked off rock where she'd been sitting. Her quick thinking and frontier pragmatism saved her life, while giving Sam precious seconds to continue his attack. Peterson and his men had taken cover at the canyon's mouth, their presence adding chaos to an already desperate situation. Sam knew he had in the fight quickly before the bandits regained their composure, and began using Catherine as a human shield. His 4th shot caught another bandit in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending his weapon flying. The 5th shot missed, but came close enough to send the remaining outlaws scrambling for better cover among the canyon's scattered boulders. "Sam!" Catherine's voice carried clearly across the gunfire, 2 men moving toward the horses. Her warning allowed Sam to shift his aim toward the bandits attempting to escape with their stolen silver. His 6th shot dropped one man 20 feet from the picketed horses, while his 7th sent the other diving for cover behind a rock formation that offered limited protection. The canyon fell silent except for the groans of wounded men and the nervous whinnying of frightened horses. Sam held his position, scanning for movement while reloading his rifle with practiced efficiency. Years of buffalo hunting had taught him that wounded predators were often more dangerous than healthy ones. Anyone still alive down there better throw out their weapons and surrender. Sam called out, "I've got all day and plenty of ammunition." After a tense minute, a voice answered from behind the rocks. "Don't shoot. We give up." One by one, the surviving bandits emerged with their hands raised, their confidence replaced by the resignation of men who'd gambled everything and lost. Sam kept them covered while Peterson and his companions secured the scattered weapons and checked on the wounded. Catherine worked herself free from her bonds and stood with the poise of someone who'd never doubted the outcome despite facing mortal danger. When Sam finally climbed down from his elevated position, she met him with a smile that transformed her entire face. "I knew you'd come," she said simply. "When I heard that first shot, I knew you'd found a way." Sam wanted to take her in his arms, but settled for a careful examination to ensure she hadn't been injured during the firefight. Catherine submitted to his concern with patience that suggested understanding of his need to confirm her safety. "How did you know where to find us?" Catherine asked as they supervised the bandit surrender. "Tracked you from the ambush site," Sam replied. 6 riders leaving obvious sign and heading for the most defensible position in the territory. They made it easy once I understood their plan. Peterson approached with news that made Sam's blood boil. "Mr. Mitchell, we found proof of who provided information about Mrs. Hartwell's schedule. James Crawford, the mine's assistant foreman, has been meeting secretly with these bandits for weeks." Catherine's expression showed more sadness than anger at the news of her employee's betrayal. "James has 3 children and a sick wife. I suppose the bandits offered him money he couldn't resist. He'll face justice along with the rest of them," Peterson said grimly. "He'll face justice," Catherine agreed. "But his family won't suffer for his mistakes. Make sure they have what they need while he serves his prison sentence." Sam watched Catherine's response to betrayal and saw more clearly why her employees were so loyal. She understood that desperate people sometimes made terrible choices, but she refused to punish innocents for one man's failures. As they prepared to return to Silver Creek with their prisoners, Catherine drew Sam aside for a private conversation. Her earlier business formality had been replaced by something much more personal and intimate. "Sam," she began, "what you did today, it was magnificent. The courage, the skill, the way you risked everything to save not just me, but the people of Silver Creek, who depend on the mine." "Anyone would have done the same," Sam replied, though they both knew it wasn't true. "No," Catherine said firmly. Most men would have waited for official help or tried to negotiate rather than attempting such a dangerous rescue. You succeeded because you understood that sometimes the greatest risks are worth taking for the right reasons. She moved closer, her brown eyes serious with emotion she was finally allowed herself to express. I want to ask you something important, and I need you to answer honestly rather than politely. Sam nodded, though his heart was racing with anticipation of what she might say. Do you see me as Catherine Hartwell, the mine owner, or as the woman who shared your campfire and talked about dreams under the Colorado stars? The question cut to the heart of everything Sam had been struggling with since learning her true identity. Catherine's wealth and position seemed to create an impossible gulf between their circumstances. But the woman he'd rescued from bandits was the same person who prepared coffee over their trail fire and listened to his stories with genuine interest. I see the woman who faced down armed bandits rather than surrender, Sam said honestly. The woman who worried about her employees' families, even after one of them betrayed her. The woman who had courage to travel dangerous territory for her business and intelligence to ask the right questions about buffalo hunting. Catherine's smile was radiant with relief and joy. Then I have another question for you, Sam Mitchell. Will you marry me? Sam stared at her, amazed that the territory's wealthiest mine owner was proposing to a buffalo hunter whose entire worldly possessions could fit in a single pack. Catherine, you know I don't have much to offer someone in your position. You have everything I want, Catherine replied. Courage, integrity, practical skills, and the kind of character that risks everything to protect others. I've been successful in business, Sam, but I've been lonely in life. You've shown me what partnership could feel like with someone who sees me as a person rather than an opportunity. Sam looked at this remarkable woman who'd built an empire while maintaining her humanity, who'd faced death with dignity and betrayal with compassion. Catherine Hartwell represented everything he'd never dared to dream of having, but she was offered herself to him as an equal partner rather than a grateful employer. Yes, he said, pulling her into his arms. Yes, I'll marry you, Catherine Hartwell. Though I should warn you that I'm stubborn, set in my ways, and used to making my own decisions. Catherine laughed with pure happiness. Perfect. I'm stubborn, opinionated, and accustomed to running a major business operation. We should complement each other beautifully. Their kiss was interrupted by Peterson's diplomatic cough. Mrs. Hartwell, the town is waiting to celebrate your safe return, and they'll want to thank Mr. Mitchell properly for his heroism. As they rode back to Silver Creek with their prisoners, Catherine outlined her vision for their future together. Sam would indeed become security supervisor for the mine, but more than that, he'd become her partner in expanding operations throughout Colorado territory. Your skills with terrain and tactics would be invaluable for developing new mining sites, Catherine explained. And your understanding of frontier survival could help us establish operations in remote areas that other companies can't reach. Sam realized that Catherine was offering him not just employment, but genuine partnership in building something significant together. His knowledge of the territory and her business expertise could create opportunities that neither could achieve alone. 6 months later, as Sam and Catherine stood before Silver Creek's minister to exchange marriage vows, Sam reflected on the journey that had brought them together. A chance encounter with bandits had led to the deepest love he'd ever known and opportunities beyond his wildest dreams. Catherine had kept her promise to make him a true partner, in business, in life, and in building a future that honored both her success and his independence. Together, they were transforming the Hartwell mine into something even greater, while proving that love could indeed flourish between people who respected each other's strength regardless of their different backgrounds. Do you, Samuel Mitchell, take Catherine Hartwell to be your wife? Asked Reverend Thompson. I do, Sam replied, looking into the eyes of the woman who'd turned his life into an adventure more exciting than any buffalo hunt. As Silver Creek celebrated their wedding with the enthusiasm of a community grateful for both their safety and their future, Sam knew he'd found something more precious than any silver mine. A love built on mutual respect, shared courage, and a kind of partnership that made both people stronger than they could ever be alone. The buffalo hunter and the mine owner had created something entirely new together. A love story written in gunpowder and silver, sealed with bullets and wedding bands, as enduring as the Colorado mountains that shelter their impossible, wonderful life.